Okay, we're right at 7 here. We will give people a few more minutes to trickle in and we'll get going on this panel. We want to thank everyone that is here so far for joining the call. And like I said, we'll get everything going here in about 2 or 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's Hazing Prevention Panel, co-sponsored by Stevens Athletics and Stevens Greeks. It's 2020. Why does hazing still happen? We would like to thank everyone for joining us for tonight's panel discussion, both in our Zoom meeting and live on YouTube for what we hope is an annual event that's open to the entire Stevens campus community. For full disclosure, we will be recording tonight's session. So we do want everyone to be aware that we are recording tonight's session. We do ask everyone in tonight's Zoom meeting to please turn their cameras on to be active participants in tonight's discussion. Anyone in attendance can submit questions to the panel via the Zoom chat feature, or if you're live on YouTube with us this evening, you can submit comments and questions in the comments chat window. We hope to answer everyone's questions during the question and answer portion of tonight's panel discussion, but if we are unable to get to your specific question, we will have all the questions saved and hopefully someone will be able to answer your question more directly following tonight's panel discussion. Before we get underway, we would like to acknowledge Doug Waters, the Assistant Director of Athletic Communications, for his efforts in spearheading and leading Stevens Athletics Hazing Prevention Week efforts that include tonight's panel. We will begin by turning tonight's meeting over to Doug for a brief presentation about hazing. Doug?
Hello, everyone. Thanks so much for coming out, as Charles mentioned. First thing I want to say is that there's a lot of different thoughts and opinions on the differences in hazing that happen across not just college campuses, but in high school campuses or just in general, even in the workplace and things such as that. So I am not an expert in the anti-hazing world. But I did do quite a bit of research beforehand, before this panel. A lot of the stuff in this educational piece, it won't be very long, is from hazingprevention.org. If you want to learn more about anything that's said here tonight, hazingprevention.org is definitely one of the best resources out there on this subject, on a very, very important subject, especially in the two communities that are putting this on. I also want to thank Malcolm Mitchell the Assistant Director of Fraternity and Sorority Life, for helping put this together, and bringing Greek life and Stevens Athletics together for this panel. So let's just get going here. First things first, what hazing is, and there's a lot of different definitions out there on hazing. This is like I said, taken directly from hazingprevention.org. It says hazing is any action taken or any situation created intentionally that causes embarrassment, harassment, or ridicule and risks emotional and or physical harm to members of a group or a team. And this last point, I think, is one of the more important, is regardless of whether the person is willing to participate. You get a lot of that, I feel like, in the college athletics and Stevens Greek life, or just in the college Greek life world. The thought is, well, if they are willing to do this and to be a part of the team or part of the group, then it should be okay. Whereas that's not really the case at all. Some definitions of hazing, as I mentioned, vary, but all have pretty common factors. First of all, the first one that's in every situation of hazing is power differential between those in a group and those who want to join the group, or between the senior and junior members of a group. You see that quite a bit. The freshmen or the first years having to do things that the senior and junior groups aren't having to do. Another point is intentional initiation, rite, practice, or quote unquote tradition involved. A lot of times you see hazing being kind of blurred with the word tradition. People sometimes calling it it's a tradition. It's what we do as a part of this, organization that we're a part of. And in reality, it actually is hazing. And then the third point here is basically what I talked about in the definition. Willingness to participate does not absolve responsibility for either party, even if the person is willing to do whatever it is that is being asked of them, and the group is willing to do obviously whatever it is asked of them. Regardless of that, it's still considered hazing whenever it is intentionally inflicting embarrassment or something along those lines. So now I'm going to share a quick infographic with you guys. This is another definition of hazing here. It's any activity expected of someone joining or participating in a group that humiliates, degrades, abuses, or endangers them, regardless of the person's willingness to participate. We have that again with this definition. This is a kind of a staggering statistic here. More than half of college students involved in clubs, teams, organizations experience hazing. It's 55 to 45%. And that's a very high number throughout college campuses that you see quite a bit, regardless of the university or the institution. And it happens quite a bit in these groups that are putting on this panel here tonight. Varsity athletics and social fraternity or sorority both have the top two listings here: 74% for varsity athletics and 73% for fraternity and sorority life. Club sports is just behind that as well. So it's definitely fairly prevalent in the college athletics and college Greek life world for sure. The most frequently reported hazing behaviors, 26% are participating in a drinking game. 17% is a sing or a chant in a public situation. 12% is associates with specific people and not others. 12% is to drink a large amount of alcohol to the point of getting sick or passing out. 11% are just deprived of sleep. 10% are screamed and yelled at or cursed at by other members. And then finally, knowledge of hazing extends beyond the student groups engaging in the behavior. In 25% of hazing experiences, students believed coaches and or advisors were aware. And that's a quarter of that's an extremely high number as well. And also in 25% of hazing experiences, students reported that alumni were actually present at the hazing event. And then that last point there is 48 to 26% of students speak about their hazing experience with their peers and their family, respectively. So 48% with their peers, 26% with their family. So again, it's not just happening in a bubble. It's happening all across the entire college campus, and people are more aware of it than sometimes is admitted. And so a few things to ask yourself to determine whether or not something's hazing. First, would I be comfortable participating in this activity if my parents were watching? I think that's kind of a overall thought on pretty much anything that you do. Would you want your parents watching whatever it is that you are doing? Would we get in trouble if the school college administrator walked by and saw us? That's another thing you can quickly ask yourself, and the answer is no. Then you definitely could have a hazing event on your hand. Are you being asked to keep the event a secret? Are you doing anything illegal? Those are two really big points that occur quite a bit during hazing. A couple more questions. Does participation in this activity violate my values or those of this organization? So you got to really, I think at Stevens, we have extremely high values in athletics and in Greek life in general. So think back to those values that you have within your organizations to determine whether or not this event breaks those values. Is this going to cause emotional or physical distress or stress to myself or to others that are involved in the event? And am I going to be able to get a job if I have to put a criminal arrest on my application? That's a big one there at the end. I know for a lot of Stevens students, getting a job upon graduation, it's obviously much tougher if you have to put a criminal arrest on the application afterwards. With that, I will turn it back over to Charles, and we will get the panel rolling with the question and answer portion.
Thank you, Doug, for sharing all of that very important information with everyone here this evening. I would like to introduce and welcome tonight's panelists, each of whom is going to present a very unique perspective on hazing and its consequences and actions. Our first panelist is Luke Langner. Luke is a senior mechanical engineering major and is a member of Sigma Phi Epsilon fraternity. Our next panelist is Malcolm McDaniel. Malcolm is the assistant director of fraternity and sorority life at Stevens. He's also a hermano of Latino America Unida, which is Lambda Alpha Epsilon fraternity. Our next panelist is Hannah Perselli, a senior biomedical engineering major. Hannah is a member of the women's swimming team and is also president of the Student Athlete Advisory Council. Our next panelist is Russ Rogers. Russ is the director of physical education, athletics, and recreation at Stevens, a role he's held since 2000. Our next panelist is Serena Shaw. Serena is a senior business and technology major, and Serena is also a member of Alpha Phi sorority. Our next panelist is Lorenzo Spinazzi, a sophomore quantitative finance major. Lorenzo is also a member of the men's basketball team and Delta Tau Delta fraternity. And our final panelist is Ryan Wall, a junior business and technology major. Ryan is a member of the baseball team, and he's also a member of Delta Tau Delta fraternity. Our questions are going to be open for any of the appropriate panelists to answer, and we will try to complete our discussion on a given question before moving on to the next one. Our first question is open for everyone in the panel, and it's, why was tonight's panel something that you wanted to be a part of? We will begin with Luke, please.
Sure. Serena actually reached out to the Greek Leadership Honor Society a few weeks ago asking for someone, and I was really excited to see that because this is a topic that I don't think we can frankly talk about enough, and I'm always interested in opportunities to start this conversation and keep it going, especially at Stevens, because this isn't something I'd like to see happen to anybody that I know or even just know that is a part of this community. So I was interested in being involved because of that.
Malcolm?
Hello, everyone. So the reason why I wanted to be a part of the panel is Serving as the assistant director for fraternity and sorority life, I'm sure you all know that hazing is something that's heavily associated with fraternities and sororities. So I felt like it was important for me to be on the panel. I'm also a member of a fraternity as well. So I know that's a consistent conversation that my organization has a lot of, and just wanting to be able to provide education to students.
Thank you. Hannah?
Hi. So as a member and the president of SAC, I act as the voice for the student athletes of the school. And I want to do to the best of my ability to understand hazing and the repercussions that it can have and educate student athletes and other students about the potential dangers and know about those issues.
Thank you. Russ?
Thanks, Charles. Yeah, I'm excited to be on the panel as well. I've been in college athletics, worked on college campuses for a long time, and I've seen situations, the kind of damage that hazing can do, whether it's to an athletic team, a Greek organization, another organization or club on campus, even to an institution. And maybe even more importantly, the impact it can have on individuals. There's been some terrible tragedies involved with hazing. Or long-lasting types of scenarios that are very damaging to people, to their mental health. And so I'm excited to see the number of people here tonight and look forward to our discussion.
Thank you. Serena?
Yeah, hi. It's a pleasure to be here. I was humbled to be asked by Malcolm to represent the Greek community. Not only being a part of Alpha Phi, I'm also president of the Greek Honor Society, Order of Omega. So similar to Luke too, we have a responsibility as leaders within our community. And we represent obviously that specific community within Stevens, but also just nationwide, obviously. So I was really, really interested to hear more and learn more about what responsibility and duty we have as leaders within our community to prevent hazing. Just hearing different stories really, hits the heart, and like it's really, really sad to hear what can actually happen, and how to be able to prevent that is so crucial for us aspiring leaders too. So just happy to be here to learn more.
Thank you. Lorenzo?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. I think the topic of hazing is really important to address. I think it's a topic we choose to ignore and we often joke about or we don't take too seriously. But as Doug mentioned before, it's a prevalent problem. Half of college students involved in college sports or clubs at some point get hazed, which is ridiculous. But being someone both involved in a sport and in a Greek life situation, I think it's important for me to be an advocate for a hazing-free environment, as well as educate my peers on like what hazing really is. So yeah.
Thank you. And Ryan, same question.
Hi everyone, how's it going? So I want to be a part of tonight's panel just because as a student athlete and a member of Greek life, I think that it's really important to sort of bring awareness to hazing and how it is an issue, and just sort of educate everyone so we can work together to eradicate it.
Great, thank you. Our first question, or actually our second question, will be open to all of our students, both our student athlete representatives and our Greek life representatives. And even as recent as last week, it was in the news where there were stories and serious accusations about hazing on college and even high school campuses throughout the United States. And you kind of see these stories pop up more than I think people would expect them to, or even acknowledge, to Lorenzo's point. As college students, how do you guys define hazing, and why do you think hazing is something that's still a part of college culture?
So I guess I can start off. So my definition of hazing is that it's anything that you're made to do, whether it's seemingly harmless or harmful, that you wouldn't have originally chosen for you to do yourself. Someone's directing you to do it, whether or not it's good or whether or not it's bad. And I think it's still a poignant issue in college culture because of that tradition mindset they mentioned before. some individuals and organizations feel like others need to experience the same potentially traumatic events as them in order for them to be connected as a team or a group or an organization. This unfortunately leads to that toxic cycle of hazing, which can be difficult to break, where teams just continue on.
Yeah, I think Hannah hit a big point on the head right there. Is that it? Part of the definition needs to include that cyclical aspect. Is that it? In that a lot of hazing practices are instituted just to ensure that there is this sort of power divide that was mentioned earlier in the definition, and that it's because it's something the group has always done, and it's just something for the senior members to do to younger members. That's what really helps distinguish different hazing practices to me.
I'm going to add as well, I agree with both Luke and Hannah there. Really hit the nail on the head. But honestly, it's just, in my definition, it's anyone's being given a task or duty by people who feel they're of authority in that sense on whatever team organization they're a part of. And they're given this duty that makes them uncomfortable, that they don't consent to, obviously. And I believe that it really truly has kind of manifested itself into all the different cultures that we're a part of now because of the stigma around it and how it's the cool thing to do. And quite frankly, I mean, it's easy for all of us to adapt to it as being the cool thing to do, but the cool and more obviously morally just thing to do is to sway away from it and advocate for those who might be experiencing it and advocate to not experience it again. But it takes a big step because, like Hannah said, it's that tradition label that it has that unfortunately some people still might fall victim to.
Yeah, I mean, going off that, I think we have a false notion as to what hazing is. Hazing isn't simply like the extremes we see in the news and the media a lot of times. Like defining hazing as these activities only like excuses other forms of hazing and dismisses them as like innocent. Hazing to me is like any forced activity to prove any type of like sense of worth or value to an organization or a team, especially when it's done from an older member to a younger member. It could be extreme. It could be like physical or an emotional abuse, but there also are other activities that seem seemingly innocent, but keep in mind that what you think might be innocent can still do significant emotional and, physical damage. I think that it's still part of the college culture because there isn't much awareness around this issue. It seems as if like hazing is just something everyone wants to be everyone who wants to be a part of a Greek life or an athletic team has to go through. I think in order to stop this, we have to break the chain. We have to continue educating people on what classifies as hazing, what's not okay, what is okay. If as a newly initiated member, you are given an example from, especially your older peers, if you respect that hazing isn't tolerated, they will be less inclined to haze their younger members in the future.
Yeah, sort of building off what Lorenzo said, there's definitely a cyclical nature to it. I feel that, and a lot of times, the older members of the team will feel the need to haze the younger members because they went through it when they were the new guys on the block. And so they feel the need to do it to the younger members. And it's really just about breaking that cycle.
Thank you for those great comments. Our next question is for Russ and Malcolm. How have your respective organizations or what have your respective organizations done on campus to really help curb hazing and increase education and awareness for the students?
You go first, Malcolm.
Sure. So for Fraternity and Sorority Life, we have a new member education series. So anyone that is choosing to join a fraternity and sorority within that semester, they'll have a meeting with myself and Amanda that covers hazing. What does it mean? We give them like their new member Bill of Rights. So we give them that opportunity to educate themselves as well. And we have conversations about it. And then we also, last year, one of our fraternities, Sigma Phi Epsilon, really helped us in being able to bring Evelyn Piazza, who's a mom who unfortunately lost her son due to hazing. So we were able to bring that on and have it be an open program for the entire campus. So have that education as well. But we do consistent education about hazing with our new members every semester. And it's catered directly to those choosing to join our community.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think the key, I think of three things. First of all, collaborating and really forming partnerships with Student Life, with Malcolm's team to put on programs like this, to do bystander training, have speakers. When Evelyn came in last year, as he referenced, I think that's really worked well. It's helped us kind of pool our resources. We get a lot of cross-audience participation. There's a lot of student athletes that are also Greek members. So I think that's a good thing, and it shows really a university-wide commitment. I think second, it's important not to make it just a one-time thing, have a speaker come in and that's it and be done with it for the year. We really kind of just need to ingrain this in what we do. And, we talked about this, other times, just really kind of think about it as, that's not us. Hazing is not something that we do here. So whether it's a panel or speaker or whatever, I just think making it part of our everyday function as an athletic department, as a Greek system, I think that's critical. And I think most importantly, having the kind of student leadership that we're listening to and seeing here tonight is probably going to make the biggest difference. People that really will step up and understand how valuable it is to be active in talking about anti-hazing. I think that's our most valuable resource for sure, and the best way to get the message across. So,
Thank you to both of you. Our next question is for our 5 students. In your opinion, is there a difference between hazing and bullying? And if there is a difference, what is it?
So I could start it off again. In my opinion, bullying is a lot about exclusion, keeping someone out of a group or bringing them down and not including them. And hazing is about inclusion. So the whole premise of hazing is by doing these activities, you're becoming part of a group. So I think that's a really big difference, that they're trying to entice you to do these activities and put you down or make you do certain things in order to become part of an organization, whereas I think bullying is just targeted attacks to just bring you down in general.
I could continue. I think I agree with Hannah completely, but I also see, like, in another view, I personally see no real difference between hazing and bullying. I think both are intended to hurt and humiliate a person. I just think that bullying has gained more attention over the years, and in all honesty, I think hazing is the main form of bullying in college. Bullies are seen as being people who take out, like, inner frustrations and problems on other people to feel better about themselves, and I don't see the difference with hazing. You have older members of a group who suffered their pledging days and were in this sense of Greek life, and are eager to be in the position of power to have others go through what they did. So basically, like, hazing is bullying with an excuse. It's almost as if the people who haze have a predetermined right to bully a new member, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, and I think, oh,
Go ahead, Luke.
okay, I think just building off of that real quick, hazing is kind of like built to propagate through an organization, whereas bullying is seen as something that is almost universally identified and condemned. Hazing is a little bit harder to call out and keep people accountable with, so it's also easier to see continue with the organizations, which is why we continue to have these conversations.
Yeah, I was just going to build off of what Lorenzo was saying too. I think both are very similar in the sense that they are targeted and can very much degrade the person who's being attacked in that sense, for lack of a better term. But hazing has unfortunately been like the universal bullying on college campuses, and it's unfortunately taken that role and bullying in a sense can be performed. I mean, I hate using that word, but like done in different ways that are, obviously there's cyber and there's different, verbal abuse that you can have too. But hazing has this unfortunate stigma around the different activities that we might engage in at college, like being a part of an organization like drinking, for example, and doing all those things that are part of the label more than anything.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Lorenzo was saying. I personally think that hazing and bullying are one and the same, except that hazing is just sort of normalized now because it's seen as what you have to do to join the organization or the team to sort of fit in with everyone else. But it's really just putting people down and hurting them.
Thank you for those great answers. Our next question is directed towards our 3 student athletes. If you look at the way kind of rookie ritual pictures have kind of been shared on social media, so rookie dress up day or carry the bags or whatever it is, and so on and so forth, or the way the culture in general on teams are portrayed on shows like Hard Knocks or even social media. Do you think that as a society people are a little more accepting of hazing at the professional level?
Oh, you go.
No, you got it.
Okay. I think we're most definitely accepting of hazing as a professional level. You always hear stories of like cars filled with popcorns or rookies getting awful haircuts or wearing stupid outfits. Those are like really common within the NFL and the NBA. And what appears to start out as a practical joke or a harmless prank can ultimately lead to the destruction of a professional athlete's career if it goes far enough. Hazing with professional athletes is too often shaken off or ignored. And by turning a blind eye to those situations, we're condoning or not condoning it. We're allowing them to have these activities continue and people can get hurt.
I believe that there's a certain line, that can't be crossed. Like Hannah gave the examples of like the popcorn in the car and all that. For example, the Golden State Warriors have a tradition to make their rookies sing a song of their choice in front of a crowd during an open practice. This is an activity that, yes, it's embarrassing for the younger players, but I think that there's a different intention in this situation. It's not meant to be mean or to humiliate or to do anything like that. It's simply like a lighthearted tradition that the coaches actually choose to do and the captains to have their players come out of their shell and rookies come out of their shell. But the problem with this is that some people can notice that the intentions are good on these certain stages, but the negative thing is behind this is that it puts hazing on a main stage, and people not mature enough to see the distinction between what's lighthearted, positive, and what's simply intended to humiliate is the problem. So we have, organizations or other people see these things and they think we could do these to our younger players, but I think it's the intentions are somewhat different for other people. I think in other circumstances you see it mainly to humiliate.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Lorenzo was saying. I think that like the hazing of professional athletes has definitely become too normalized. Like I've definitely seen, whether it be the popcorn prank that Hannah mentioned on Bleacher Report many times in the last like 5 years or so. And I think that definitely has a trickle down effect because you're just normalizing the act of hazing and people all around the world see this and think that it's then okay.
Great answers again, especially the idea that the doing it at the professional level almost normalizes it and probably sets a bad example, especially when colleges and high schools are trying to do their best to kind of curb that kind of behavior. That was a great point. Just we'd like to remind everyone in attendance on Zoom with us or on YouTube, if you have questions for our panelists, please submit them to us via the chat panel and we will get to them in our question and answer section. And if you submit them directly to Doug and myself and wish to remain anonymous, we will ensure that you do so. The next question is open to all of our students. Within each of your teams or Greek organizations, or even just among your friend groups on campus or in your back home in your hometown, how do you guys keep a positive community among your groups, and how do you introduce new people to your groups, whether it's a team or a club or a Greek organization or even just your friend group? And before she jumps in, let's not have Hannah be the first person on this one.
I'll start here since Hannah's not going to start. A few things that come to mind are inclusivity for each and every single person, no matter what they might believe or value. At the end of the day, we're all human, and we make mistakes and we triumph or fall together. Honestly, I mean, some things might come off as cheesy, but if you kind of take a step back and look at people for who they are, it's a lot easier of a way to interact with them. And then also confronting, I mean, at least something for me with that I've learned from friends that I've made at Stevens, and people I've encountered in different organizations, is like, in order to promote that positive and safe haven essentially with other people, it's just accepting obviously who they are, and confronting any kind of degradation or discomfort that they might feel in any sense. And I'm a big advocate for, obviously, like, vulnerability is the key to leading and to also creating a trustworthy environment for anyone. So if you're able to relate in that sense and create a positive environment wherever you are with other people, then it's more likely to have a ripple effect and influence others in that sense, where they feel a lot more safe and trustworthy in your specific environment.
Yeah, I would agree with Serena. I think a big, she mentioned vulnerability in there, and I think that's really big. Both like something that we use within SIGEP and I use just with my friends, is just being open and honest in our communication and building our relationships off of what we can learn about each other and from each other, rather than relying on something like hazing and just mutually accepted bullying. Focusing more on who we are and how we can connect to build up our organizations and our friendships.
Yeah, so just in terms of sort of bringing in new people, as Charles mentioned, I think that at Stevens, we have such a valuable resource in that the overwhelming majority of the upperclassmen live in off-campus apartments. And I know that obviously this year with the ongoing pandemic and everything, you can't be inviting the freshmen from your team over to hang out and watch games, but I just really think that we need to utilize that resource more and sort of include everyone.
I agree with that. I also think that it starts with the leadership, the older people, the captains, whatever you want to say, or the coaches. I've been lucky to have some good leaders. My coaches have held everyone accountable, whether it's a freshman or whether it's a senior. We all have responsibilities to get stuff, to bring stuff to the bus, or to set up stuff. It holds everyone to like an equal standard. And I think they do a great job with that, especially also our captains. Last year, I remember Spencer Cook was including everyone. If a senior made a mistake or if a freshman made a mistake, he would yell at them in the same way. Sometimes that wasn't so fun, but it sends a message to everyone that everyone's equal. And from a Greek-like standpoint, our president, Adam Corby, he does a good job with that as well. He'll treat the freshman or a senior the same way. If you have a responsibility, it's your responsibility, period. There's no favoritism. There's no, I'm going to treat the freshman worse and I'm going to give you a pass because you're a senior.
Yeah, to build off Ryan and Lorenzo, swimming, we're very food oriented. So at the beginning of each season, the upperclassmen will cook a meal or we'll go out for frozen yogurt or something and kind of talk and get to know each other and open that dialogue so everyone feels included and comfortable within the team.
Hannah, do you have to be in swimming to get invited for frozen yogurt, or is that just a swimming thing?
I'm sure anybody can come. If you see us, you're more than welcome to join us. But it's kind of a thing that I remember from my freshman year. That's kind of how I got to meet everybody. We sat on the pier and ate frozen yogurt. So I guess it kind of became a little bit of a tradition.
Sure. Lorenzo, I want to circle back to to your story a little bit, and kind of what you just talked about with kind of getting involved in the different groups. You're a transfer student to Stevens, and someone, if you don't mind me saying, joined Stevens mid-year. Did you find that you found yourself trying to get more involved or trying to kind of crack pre-form groups or anything like that because you joined in the middle of the year? So whether it was, with basketball or with the Greek life or even just anything else on campus?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. It was definitely tough coming in, especially weird transfer time, fresh second semester of freshman year. So that first semester, you have all these people making friends, making connections. And when I got here, I was so surprised as to how everyone tried to include me into different groups as well. And I noticed how different from my old school, these groups kind of also mingled with each other a little bit. So this type of connection and this interweaving of groups made me gain a lot of connections, a lot of friends. And especially I think that the thing that made me made me feel at home the most was the support of the basketball team, was the great leadership, was the lack of hazing, was you're on our team. I don't care if you showed up midway, you're still a part of the team. And that was great.
Thank you for sharing. And Serena, if you don't mind, I'd like to circle back to something that you said as well. You talked about the idea that everybody makes mistakes. Why is it that acknowledging that people make mistakes and sometimes can grow from doing the wrong? Why is that such an important part of this process, or any part of the process in general, rather?
Sure. So something that I felt got more attention over the past few months in terms of just living in COVID and just being, I mean, not to, take the attention off of hazing prevention here, but if it all circles back, I think, with living in COVID, everyone's focusing on the absolute negatives of society. And I fall victim to this. Everyone does it. It's not to point out anyone specifically. So I think so often we all get so stuck in our own ways and our routine, and we are so quick to jump into what's wrong and all the negatives we experience on a day-to-day basis. But so very, very rarely do we actually recognize the good things and something good that someone does. And I think if you twist it and look at, people making mistakes and that you can grow from it, so often we look at, you made a mistake, you screwed up, and the negative behind it and all the people that are affected. But the way that you can grow, the positive that you see in it, is actually looking at it through a different lens. And it's very, very difficult to do, but it's something that at least with my family, I got a lot closer to them in COVID. And my younger sister, she really brought it to my attention too, just seeing recognizing the little things that were actually important, taking away from, oh, you spilled that at dinner. Why did you do, something like that, very little things that could go from spilling something at dinner with your family to actually not, holding someone accountable when you're out with them later at night or something. And that where you feel that you weren't a good influence in that aspect. And it's so easy for everyone in society just to go straight to the negatives and not acknowledge the positives. So if you can see a positive from making a mistake, it's half the battle to growing. That's how I look at it. So hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you think that, kind of circling back to kind of specifically hazing, do you think that accountability, to use your word, the idea that, hey, John, what you did was inappropriate or didn't make me feel good, do you think that that can help organizations grow and culture strengthen?
Me personally, or is this for all the students?
You personally, just because we're kind of, but if anybody else wants to chime in, they certainly can.
Absolutely. So going back to the whole idea of it being the cool thing, and I feel like I face it even just trying to lead in general. No one wants to be that guy that calls that person out. It's just part of tradition. It's just a part of living in college. Everyone's afraid to do the right thing. And I hate that. I'm positive I can speak for a lot of people on this call and other panelists too. I absolutely loathe that is a way that we live, with that fear of doing something good because we don't want to be looked at differently. But in order to actually advocate for that change, you need to be the example yourself. I'll give an example. My freshman year, I was on the women's soccer team, the varsity soccer team. I had to stop because of injuries. I found an absolute family in the team culture that I'd never had on any other competitive soccer team that I played on before. And I remember the captains at the time, but even just upperclassmen. I remember Liv Butera. She was advocating for hazing prevention too, and she's like a big sister to me now, big role model. I just always looked at her. I kind of idolized her. I looked at her as like the cool person, like, you know, Liv's doing it, we're gonna do it, and Liv's not doing it, we're not gonna do it, essentially. And she had so much, like, she carried herself with so much respect, and was grounded within her decisions. And for me, it influenced me more than anything to just, when she says ducks don't haze, that's not us, I was like, that's what I'm going to try and do within any organization I'm going to advocate for. So especially within leading Order of Omega, and just being as big of a, you know, a good sister in Alpha Phi, that's something that I brought to my sisters and fellow leaders' attention come, I believe it was Hazing Prevention Awareness Week, when we did for Greek Life, the Love Mom and Dad presentation, and trying to get more people to go become more aware of that. And so something that she always was very good at, even off the soccer field, was holding us accountable and treating all of us the same. I was a freshman. She treated me the exact same as her equals, and being a senior. And not to call her out, but I just think having one specific example can kind of eliminate that fear that we all might feel of, it's okay to hold someone accountable and do the right thing.
Great, thank you. Our next question is for our two administrators, Russ and Malcolm, and you've both been on campus for varying degrees of time and in different roles, and have different experiences with different groups of college students on campus. I guess, or even, you know, if you wanted to talk about this from your pre-Stevens experience, that's fine as well. But how have policies related to hazing advanced or progressed or changed since you're either at Stevens or involved in college life?
Am I going to go first, Ross?
Sure thing. Why not?
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. So I would say, just like, if we're looking at the fraternity and sorority lens, I think there's been consistently a lot of changes, and usually you see those changes happen when there's a news story that makes national news. So for example, I know with our culturally based fraternities and sororities, there was an incident that happened in around like the early 90s where a member of Alpha Alpha unfortunately passed away due to hazing. So the National Panhellenic Council eliminated hazing and underground pledging, period, in response to that, where they reevaluated their new member processes. And I think more recently, the unfortunate incident that happened at Penn State, I think also led a lot of change to evaluating what hazing means, and for not just national law, but like state laws as well, to be much more harsher on hazing. And as fraternities and sorority advisors, we've put in a lot more work to continue that education. So I know, especially in Penn State, I believe one of the rules in response to the situation that happened at Penn State was that now all colleges in Pennsylvania must have publicly, like, any organizations that were found responsible for hazing. So I think there's a constant change that happens, and it usually happens when there's one incident that has made national news. In an ideal situation, we wouldn't have to wait till something happens that rocks like all college campuses, right? Like, I think it's better to be more proactive when it comes to hazing practices, and like wanting to curb that, than being reactive to a particular situation.
Yeah, I think Malcolm gave a great answer. I think there's more education, there's more discussion. We are being more proactive on it now, and that's really important. I think in athletics too, and this has always been something that we've emphasized, but I think now, and maybe over the last few years more than ever, is the importance of team culture. And you've heard some of our student athletes talk about that tonight, and how that really dictates so much in their experience. And yeah, you know, we want to win, we want to be successful, and we've been fortunate to be able to experience that. But I think we've been very consistent, from me to our other administrators, to our coaching staff, to our student athletes, that the experience is far and away the most important thing. And I think something like hazing can really do significant damage to a team's culture and really rip it apart. And that goes away. All the success, the winning, that stuff's going to go away as well. So I think the focus on team culture and student athlete experience and really prioritizing that has also been important.
Thank you. Our next question's for the entire panel. Everybody seems to focus on athletics and Greek life, and Doug shared the infographic with us before about 55% of college students are being hazed, and I know Lorenzo touched on kind of the idea that it's focused on athletics and Greek life, but why is that different at Stevens? You know, what are our teams, besides the impetus, the importance that the administrators put on organizations and teams to not haze, or to be better about, you know, making sure that everyone's involved at the same level. You know, why is Stevens so different, that, you know, hazing is not a problem here on campus, and how do our Greek organizations and athletic teams carry themselves differently than their on other college campuses around the country?
I would specifically kind of circle back to accountability. I mean, that honestly, like, that's genuinely the first thing that I think of. I really wasn't, and I was familiar with it, but I wasn't, any team that I played on before, any organization that I was involved in, completely ignored accountability. Like, it was never a value. And the fact that it's enforced, I mean, through, I'm not going to speak for all the student athletes, because I know they can speak of their own experiences, but for the way that I, you know, even being on a team my first year at Stevens, I was determined, no matter if I continued playing or not, I was going to continue that mindset. And that responsibility as a friend, as a sister, as a student, wherever I was going to continue it as a leader too, more than anything. And I think it's so powerful because, I mean, it's cheesy, but I mean, they say, like, ducks fly together, like there's no one left behind. I mean, honestly, like, it's super true, because I really don't feel much of a barrier between the athletic community and, you know, the normal population of students, or the Greek community and the normal population of students. We're all in it together. We're all trying to get through it together, essentially. And so the fact of the matter is, like, no matter where you go, you're going to be acknowledged and you're going to be heard, just because of, I think it's like a sign of the times and whatever, you know, the life that we're experiencing and what's been happening in society. So I think there's a lot of inclusivity and transparency to be met with the accountability, and how it's really good to do the right thing. It's becoming the cooler thing slowly. And I feel like we have to continue to have that responsibility.
Yeah, to build off what Serena said, I think accountability is a huge thing. I also think something she said earlier about leadership, having leaders on the team, senior members, advocate for not hazing and showing that it's not something that we stand for in athletics or in Greek life. I know a lot of the senior members when I was younger had the Ducks Don't Haze stickers on their water bottles, or they had the wristbands, and we would have different events and they would talk about, you know, if you're ever uncomfortable, please let us know. And having that open dialogue and being comfortable, I think, is a super big reason why we don't have these big of issues at Stevens, especially because we're on the smaller side of the school, right? We have smaller teams, smaller organizations, so we're able to know each other well and kind of have those good dialogues.
Yeah, building off what Hannah said, I think that it definitely is a lot about leadership. I still remember my first practice at Stevens when I was a freshman, and it's something that really stood out to me was that every single one of the seniors came up to me and all the freshmen introduced themselves and asked us how we were doing and everything. And I think that really just set the precedent for me and all of my other teammates to do the same thing for all the freshmen that came in after us. And I think that's just a really important aspect of it.
I think, yeah, I mean, we all, everyone who commented on this and responded to this mentioned like a sense of community. I think Stevens has a great sense of community, and it's like building blocks in a house. There can't be any weak blocks. I think that from the coaches, the administrators, the older player, if we're talking about sports teams, the older captains and then the new incoming freshmen, I think everyone has just a general sense of, listen, we're here for a goal, and we know that humiliating anyone or hazing anyone is only going to damage a group, is only going to damage a team, it's only going to damage friendships, it's only going to damage everything in a sense. So I think that Stevens is a group of a lot of mature young adults that realize that there's no room for hazing in a successful team, a successful classroom, a successful fraternity, so yeah.
Ryan, before we move to our last question, I just want to follow up on something you just mentioned very briefly. Do you think the adults set the tone? I know for the baseball team, you guys have a lot of coaches, some are alumni, but, that come back and help out with the program, but you have a lot of adults that are involved in your program. Do you think that tone that you were talking about really starts with the adults that are helping run, whether it's coaches or whether it's someone like Russ or someone like Malcolm that heads his organizations? How important is that relationship between students and adults when it comes to that kind of culture or that kind of behavior?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that a lot of it does start with sort of like the coaches and the administrators. I know that something that our team does every year. Our coaches set up like a buddy program, quote unquote, and they pair each incoming freshman with 1 to 2 upperclassmen. And I think that that's really important in just sort of fostering that team mentality right from the start.
Great, thank you. And we'll close with this idea. There's been a lot of, kind of buzzwords that we've heard tonight. We've heard about intentionality. We've heard about, this not being a one-time deal, about culture and so on and so forth. But where do we go from here? So everyone that's on the panel tonight, how do we keep this conversation going, especially at Stevens, whether it's from, an athletics perspective or from a Greek life perspective or from an entire campus perspective? And how do we create that inclusive environment that I think everyone is looking for here at Stevens?
I think a major thing that we can all do, not even just looking at the leaders of Greek organizations or captains of athletics teams, but something that everybody on the call can do is be the example. Maybe when you get to be, in your junior or senior year, be the senior that you wanted to see on the team that really helped you along and set the example from that perspective. Don't be afraid to call people out. If there's a practice that you are uncomfortable with, talk to your teammates, talk to somebody who can help intervene in that situation and be the one to set the standard for accountability and continue to create a common understanding of that within your organization, because it's while we often see hazing coming from the senior members or whatever it is, it's up to everybody to be an active part of this conversation and to make sure that it doesn't continue. So being an active part of that accountability factor is really important.
I'm gonna build off of what Luke was saying too. Kind of going back to what we were talking about of doing the right thing. I think so often it's easy to ignore your intuition or not go with your gut when you just like, even when it's a fleeting thought, like that'd be good if I helped that person, or I should totally stop and say something, but I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that guy. Like I don't want to be that person. But I challenge. I'm still challenging myself to do it because everyone falls victim to it. It's not a good pattern to get into, but I guarantee, and I've been told too, like once you break the pattern or you break that rhythm and you actually listen to the intuition, you actually do the right thing, you're going to feel better. You're going to influence a lot of other people and you're going to be able to make an impact, and you're more than likely going to keep doing the right thing. It's going to open up a lot of different doors of opportunity for you. So I think it's really silly to just tell people listen to what's right or listen to what's tugging at you, but it's a standard that everyone goes by. Like why would I do that? Why I don't want to be involved in that. But if you have to actually step in, it can open up a lot of good opportunity that we just don't necessarily associate with it right away.
Yeah, I think it's important to just like have continued conversation, right? Like it's not something that like you have one conversation and kind of end it. Like always having these conversations, always evaluating like current practices and traditions that your organizations hold, and making sure that the intention behind it is still there. And that's also not an opportunity to like freestyle and try and do something different, because that can deviate into like a whole nother conversation that could eventually lead down to the hazing route. So like, I don't know where I was going with that. So I'm just going to keep on going in terms of just like general education as well. So knowing like how to report if you or somebody that you know is being hazed. So, you can always contact a school administrator. You can submit a care report. There's also like the National Hazing Hotline that you can call, which would get back to a university professional. So just making sure like, if you see something or if you are aware of it, to not be complicit in it, but to report it so that so that it doesn't continue happening in the future.
Yeah, just going off what Malcolm said, I think that it's extremely important to not only bring up tough subjects such as hazing, but to keep the conversation going. And I think it's really important having events like we are right now to just sort of shed light on this problem and how widespread it is. And in terms of being as inclusive as possible, I really think that, I mean, this isn't the technical answer that you're probably going to be looking for, but just be a nice person. It's not that hard.
Ryan, I think that's about as technical as it can get.
I think that the point of this panel is not for us to expect you guys to go around wearing "I hate hazing" on your shirt and just be one of like a complete advocate against it. I think it starts with the little things. It starts with like, you might, if you do see hazing or whether it's happening around you or a friend of yours is doing it, I think that it's important that you call them out. Or if you're the one doing it, you hold yourself accountable to and you call it out yourself. And I think that's the biggest start point. It's the little things. And then slowly, if we start seeing a bunch of these little things all around campus, even though we don't really have, I mean, what I've seen is that we haven't seen too much of a problem with hazing, but if we do this and we take responsibility like this, I think that the hazing won't be a problem anymore here,
Yeah, so I really agree with what everybody said. It's important for us to practice what we preach, right? If you see something, say something, be involved. Everyone should remember that your actions represent not only you, it represents your organization or your team, and bigger than that, the athletic department, the Greeks organizations in general, and even the school. So if you see something happening, whether it's a team member or a member of your organization, remember that reflects on you and it reflects on the school as a whole. And we want our school to be perceived and known as a really healthy and safe place to be. And we want to make sure that we can prevent any kind of issues that can arise and make sure everyone's comfortable and safe. So you kind of have to remember the ducks don't haze.
And Charles, I think what answers your question too about what makes Stevens different is this: we're so fortunate to have students like we have on the panel tonight with the kind of leadership that they've shown. There's many more out there in this audience, I know, and I think that's also the answer to going forward is, and I referenced it before, is student leadership in this area stepping up and taking care of each other, and sometimes maybe saying or doing what might be unpopular, but what is right. And I think we're in very good hands here, and really fortunate to have the kind of student leadership that we do.
Thank you for those great responses, each and every one of you. They were fantastic and it helped keep tonight's conversation moving, and we're very grateful for that. And that will end tonight's discussion, or tonight's hazing panel, or hazing prevention panel rather. We would like to thank our student panelists and our two administrative panelists for giving their time and their thoughtful answers and questions. We'd also like to thank Malcolm McDaniel for his efforts on behalf of the Stevens Greeks, and of course to Doug Waters for his coordinating and spearheading tonight's discussion and Stevens Athletics anti-hazing efforts over the last couple of weeks. And lastly, we'd like to thank each and every person for their time and attending tonight's panel. Your attendance makes things like this important, and hopefully this is the first of an annual series that we're able to do that encompasses the entire Stevens campus community. We have some resources that we would like to share with you before we wrap up tonight's event. You should see those on your screen now. The contact information for Stevens Counseling and Psychological Services and the anti-hazing hotline, among many resources. And don't forget that Doug mentioned there are a couple of websites that he shared during his presentation with plenty of additional resources for you. So that'll conclude tonight's anti-hazing panel. And we'd like to thank everyone for their time, and we hope that everyone enjoys the rest of their evening.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks, y'all did a great job. Really appreciate it.